naming conventions or names in any kind of software development is very important concept. Okay, you just cannot name a class anything what you want. You just cannot name a variable or a method anything what you want. It becomes very important for a programmer to give his class, to give his variable, or to give his method an appropriate name. Okay, and that is why whenever we are writing code, first of all, or when we are starting any project, or we are debugging any open source projects, at that particular time, the first and the foremost important thing is you should be knowing the coding conventions of that particular project. Now, if anybody is coding in Java, they are supposed to follow camel casing coding conventions. Now, when we are talking about camel casing of a coding convention, it means whenever you are giving a name to a particular class, the name should always start with a capital letter. Whenever you are giving a name to a variable, the name of the variable should always start with a lowercase letter. And whenever you are giving the name to any particular method, the name of the method should always start from or with a particular lowercase letter. Now, following only these code conventions does not make your code readable. In order that your code is readable and it is done by any other programmer, you should have appropriate names. Now suppose I am writing a class called as person, or I am going to create a code which is going to tell me the abilities of a particular person. A person can walk, a person can talk, a person can draw, a person can eat. Now, if I want to write a code, or if I want to write a class on this particular concept, I would not write class ABCD and then int A, int B, int C, and name of the methods as void ABC. The method, the body of the method goes in here. Void XYZ. The body of the method goes in here. Now, any programmer, if he looks at this particular code of mine, by just looking at the class, the name of the class, the name of the variables, as well as the name of the methods, he won't understand what this particular class is about. But in case, instead of writing ABCD over here, I would have given the name called as person. Okay? Instead of int A, I would have given over here int first name. Instead of int B, I would have given here last name. Instead of int C, I would have given here profession. Okay? And for the methods which are named as ABC, I would have written over here draw. I would have written over here can walk. Now, if any programmer looks at this particular class and he sees the attributes of this particular class, he would be able to judge that this code is a code about a person. The attributes of the person would be first name, last name, and the profession, and the methods, which is nothing but draw, and another method is can walk. This is showing me what a person is capable of. Okay? Now, whenever you are naming any method, it is very important to name the method as to the action of the method, which means the name of the method should simplify, or the main name of the method should point what that method is going to do. If I am saying over here draw, this means the method is capable of drawing something. If I am writing here the name of the method as can walk, this particular method is going to tell me whether this person is capable of walking or whether this person is not capable of walking. Okay? So whenever a programmer is giving a name to a particular method, it should be descriptive as to what that particular method is going to do. Okay? Now, suppose, let's elaborate on this particular method of draw. Now, I am defining over here as a person has got an ability to draw. But draw what? he can draw a triangle, he can draw an integer, he can draw a square, he can draw a cartoon, he can draw a fan, he can draw a painting, he can draw any number of objects, but I am not saying over here what he can draw. I am only saying this particular person is capable of drawing. Now, if I want to go and specify it further, that this person is capable of drawing a triangle, this particular person is capable of drawing a rectangle, then what I need to do is, I need to define this particular method as draw triangle, and then I would say draw rectangle. Now if anybody looks at this particular code and these two methods, they would come to know, okay, this person is capable of drawing a triangle as well as this person is capable of drawing a rectangle. Now there are numerous things in the world which a person can draw. The things should not be limited. I mean, the objects what a person can draw should not be limited to these methods. What I'm trying to say over here is, I can have a person who can draw various things. He can draw a rectangle, he can draw a triangle, he can draw a square, he can draw a body or a child's body, or he can draw a fan, he can draw any number of objects, but I don't know what he would draw, or I am not specific about what he would choose to draw. So as a programmer, I cannot have those many methods over here telling him a person can draw this or a person can draw that. Now, giving name to each and every method on its action is very, very tedious job. A programmer will have to scratch his hair to decide what I should give the name of the method who can draw a triangle, what I should give to a name of a method who can draw a square. This becomes very confusing for a programmer, and this is where the concept of overloading comes in picture. Okay? Now, what is, first of all, we would understand what do you mean by overloading, and then we will see how this concept of overloading has resolved my problem over here, which is drawing numerous objects at a given particular time. Now, when we talk about overloading, many people have very different perspective in their mind, that overloading is just nothing but another name for a method. It's not like that. In Java, whenever you are talking about overloading, or it is even called as static polymorphism, it means that two methods in a given class can share same name. Okay, when two methods in a given class shares a same name, then I can say that one method is an overloaded version of another method. Okay, but now when I talk or when I am declaring the same name, what happens over here? Just see. When I say in this particular class, I have int I. Okay, then again in the next line, I would say I have got an int I again. Now here, what am I doing? I have two variables. One is this variable and the second is this particular variable. Okay, both the variables have got same name. When I try to compile this situation, it's going to give me a compilation error saying that, see boss, there is a duplicate on line number 2, so I cannot compile. Which means whenever you're talking about variables, in Java, no two variables can have the same name in the same class. But when we are talking about methods, okay, now I am saying, I just change this and say int m1, which is nothing but I am describing a method with the name m1 and return parameter as int. In the second line also, I am defining a method called as m1 with the return type as int. Now if I try to compile this line, again it would give me an error saying that there is a duplicate. till the time you don't delete this line, we cannot compile further. Then, just now I had said, the definition of overloading was two methods having same name in the same class are called as overloaded methods. But when I try to do this, that means name of the method M1, name of the method M1. Two methods with the same name in a given class. Let's call this class as A. Okay, now it is not compiling. Why is that so? This is because I have not overloaded the method M1 in a correct manner. Whenever I say about overloading of methods, it always says that the method or the name of the method can be same, the return type of the method can be same, but the number of arguments what a method is taking, okay, the number of arguments or the type of the arguments which both the methods are taking should completely be different. Okay, now when I am saying over here int M1 takes int A and int B. Okay, so now when we are talking about this particular method M1, what are the total number of parameters this method has taken? It is 2. Okay, now here I am writing int C. Okay, here this particular method M1 is taking how many parameters? It is taking only one parameter. So now in this particular situation where we have name as same, that is M1 and M1, return type same, int and int, but the parameters which this particular method is taking, that is the signature of the method, should be different. Now, how the signature can be different? Signature can be different in various ways. That is, the number of the arguments can vary. Here, my second method, that is second method M1, is taking one parameter int. My first method M1 is taking two parameters. So, just by looking at the signature of the method, I can say that these two methods, which are named as M1, are overloaded. Okay. Now, I would just ask you one question, which is, just look at the methods where I have the return type as int, M1, which is taking one parameter, and the value or the type of the parameter is int. Look at the second method, which is named as M1 again, the return type is int again, and this particular method is also taking one parameter which is of type int. Now can you guys guess whether this is a case of overloading, whether my program would compile or it would not compile? My program would not compile. Why? Because though the name of the method matches, the type or the number of parameters each method is taking is same. This M1 taking one parameter, this M1 taking one parameter. Okay. Now, even if the number of parameters are same, then JVM checks whether the type of the parameter matches or it doesn't. Here in this case, the type of the parameter here is int, the type of the parameter here is also int. Okay, so now when the number of argument matches, okay, one test completed. Now I would go and see whether the type of the parameter matches or no. And if the type of the parameter also matches, then I would say this is not the case of overloading at all. So here when I try to compile this program, it would not compile. Now here I do a slight change. Okay, now instead of int over here, I am saying long. Okay, now here I have one parameter in method M1, one parameter in method M1 at the second line, but my JVM is first going to check the number of parameters. The number of the parameters match, go to the second test. The second test is the type of the parameter. Now since the type of the parameter varies, I would give a green signal and say that this is the case of overloading. Okay, so in particular, or if you would find this particular definition in most of your textbooks, which says that in Java there is a possibility of methods having same name. The return type can be same or can be different. Okay, there is no specific rule for a return type. It can be same or it can be different, but the number of the parameters or the type of the parameters should differ. If there is a difference between the argument list, then only two methods are said to be having overloaded. Now let's compile this, or let's put this particular thing into a program and see the results. We would type, or we would create a class called as person. So I'll say class person, okay, enter on line number 3. Now here I am going to declare two variables, okay. One would be string name, and int age. Okay, now we would declare a method called as draw. So could you just say draw? Okay, and empty parenthesis. Draw is not taking any argument right now. In the braces on line number 7, just type system.out.println draw called. System.out.println is the name of the method. Out.println semicolon, double quotes, and just inside the double quotes write draw called. Okay, now in the next line, just press enter, write or type one more, type int draw, or just cut, copy, paste this entire thing. Line number 5, 6, 7, 8. Copy that and paste it on line number 9. Okay. Now, in this particular manner, when we have two methods having the same name and the same number of parameters, you tell me whether this is a case of overloading or my compiler is going to compile this. Correct. This is the case where overloading is considered as false. Why? Because the name of the method matches, return type matches, whereas the name or the argument list also matches. I'm not passing any argument over here, I'm not passing any argument over here. Let's compile it and see what does the compiler tell us. So just save this as person. That's it. Okay, now we would go to the command prompt and type javac space person.java. Draw is already defined in person. What would have happened? Go to edit plus. I came till here, okay? Everything was perfectly working fine. Then I looked at, I means the JVM, okay? Then the JVM looked at line number 9 and it saw int draw again, okay? This line is getting repeated over here as it is. The signature matches, the name matches, and the return type matches, and therefore it is giving me an error. It is already defined, so I would not compile it. Now, when I pass an integer over here, if you just type over here int I, okay, and we would like to print the value of I. So just say plus I over here, plus I. Okay, now we will try and compile this class. Go back again. Okay, what did we miss over here? The return type is specified as int and we are not returning over here anything. So in both the methods we are going to add return, just click over here, enter, return 10 any random number, okay, semicolon, and over here we are going to return the same I variable. Enter return I. Okay, now try compiling it. Java person. Now he is trying to run the program, but it would not run because we have not written anything in main at all. Okay, now in the main, in order to call one of these methods, what we need to do? We need to create a class of person, and then on that object we need to invoke one of the methods. Okay, so just say person P equal new person. We'll create an object of a person, semicolon, and on the next line say P dot draw, empty parenthesis. Now here comes the magic of your JVM. Now you would say, what is the magic? When I am compiling this particular program, I am saying that call the method draw. Okay, now while compilation, what would happen? I would see that whether this draw method with the same signature is there in the class or no. Will I find the method? Yes, I would find, because it has been defined on line number 5. But when you are running the program, okay, whenever you run the program, an object is getting created over here, and I am invoking an overloaded method. The overloaded method over here is draw. I am trying to invoke an overloaded method by saying p.draw. At the time of running, okay, or when your program is running, at that particular time, I am going to check whether the user or the caller is passing any number of arguments. I would match those arguments. I means who again? The JVM, okay? Whenever you guys are typing the code or whenever you are creating the code, you should always think from the compiler point of view. If you are thinking from the compiler point of view, you will never ever commit any mistakes, okay? So now the compiler is going to see that he is invoking an overloaded method called as draw, but the number of parameters which he is passing is none. So at the time of running, I am going to make my decision that which overloaded method I should call. Okay, so now the JVM is going to see that there is no parameters which are passed over here, which means that he is calling the draw method which is at line number 5. Okay, so this particular decision that which overloaded method I am supposed to invoke at the time of running the program is made by the JVM on the arguments which you are passing at the running time. Okay, now just enter over here and say p.draw again and invoke the second method, p.draw 10, or pass any random number, 11, 12, 13. Okay. Now at line number 21, what do you see? At line number 21, when I am compiling the code, I would check that there is a person object, and this person object is invoking the method draw, which is taking one argument. Does this method exist in my class? Yes, it does exist. Okay, and at the time of invoking this method, I am going to call the method which is nothing but at line number 10. Now I would write one more method over here. Can you just cut, copy, paste this thing again? Okay, copy this and paste it on line number 15. Now instead of int, say long. So here, this is the third version of my overloaded method draw, and this particular method is taking only one argument. But can I say this as an overloaded version? Yes, I can definitely say this as an overloaded version, because the type of the argument changes, or the type of the argument varies. Here it is int and here it is long. Okay. Now by looking at this line number 26, that is p dot draw, can you tell me which method is going to get invoked? The one which is having a parameter long or the one which is having the parameter int? Because both of them are taking one parameter. That one parameter is a numeric parameter. I have not defined that I am going to pass a long. I have not defined I am going to pass a int. Okay? But I have just invoked a method. Come down. I have just invoked a method p.draw and I am passing a numeric value over here. Now tell me which method is going to get invoked. Can we just type and see? Or can we just run the program? Now just a minute. Here just say draw int called, draw long called. So we will come to know which method is getting invoked when we are saying p.draw 11. Okay, now compile the class. Okay, yeah, go behind. You're just pass 10 again. 10 and 10. Because since the return type is in it. Okay, so now I'm compiling my program. Now wait a second. In my main, remember what I have passed. I have invoked the method with 11 as a number. I have not specified whether this 11 is a long or whether this 11 is a integer type. Okay. Now can you tell me which method is going to get called? Okay, just run the program and we'll see. Okay. Now first the draw called because we were calling a method without any parameters, and bingo, what happened over here? Here you are getting to see draw int called. Now, and the number you are printing over here as I. Now you would question me that why did int got called? Why didn't long got called? Okay, because when I am passing over here 11 or when I am passing over here the parameter, I am passing only one parameter. What if I wished that a long should be passed over here? Again, this is because at the runtime your JVM is looking at the argument, the type of the argument, and then it is going to invoke your overloaded method. Okay, the decision as to which overloaded method is to be invoked is not taken at the compile time at all. It is taken at the runtime. Now you would ask me again, okay, even if it is taken as at the runtime, why did int got called? Why not long got called? The reason is whenever you are declaring any number, okay, if you are declaring 11, 12, 13, 14, by default that number is converted into an int by your JVM. Okay, this you must have studied when you were doing your language fundamentals and you were learning about your numeric types and all those things. Any number I define in my class, JVM considers it as an integer. If I have to tell my JVM that, see boss, this is not an integer but this is a long, then I need to suffix this with L. Now if I say 11L, that means nothing but I am passing a numeric or I am passing a numeric value which is of type long. Now compile the program again. We have compiled. Now let's see what thing gets called. Okay. Now when we have compiled, it is calling draw called as expected and draw long called, because at the time of running the program, the argument which I have supplied to it was of type long and it was not of type int. Okay. So this, and that is the reason it is called as static polymorphism. Okay. Now here I would like to make some changes. Go up and comment this line from line number 10 to line number 14. Just comment this. We will now play some circus and see that under different circumstances how does your overloading mechanism reacts. Okay. Okay. Now here I have two methods. One is int draw, not taking any parameters. Second is int draw taking one parameter, and that is of also type long. Now just come down and here remove this L. Okay, now in my main, what have I done? I have created an object and I am calling p.draw. We have seen this scenario before or earlier, that whenever we are passing 11 or whenever we are just giving a numeric, an integer or this 11 is converted into an int, and then the method is getting called according to the type of the parameter. Now if I compile this, will this get compiled? Will this get compiled? Yes. How would it get compiled? I would see whether there is draw which is taking any numeric parameter. Yes, it is taken. Okay, so I will compile it. Or the compiler is going to compile it. We'll just see that. javac_person.java, enter. Now go back to the program. Now while running the program, okay, whenever I am running the program and I say p.draw and I am giving this value as an integer, okay, as a compiler I would search for a method which is taking an integer, right? But do I have a method over here, anything which is taking an integer? No. So does it mean it's going to give me an error or it's going to give me a runtime error? Let's see. We will compile this program and say Java person. Something else happened. At the runtime, my compiler or my JVM did not give me any error. Okay? Instead of giving an error, it gave a call to a draw method which is taking long as a parameter. Go back to the program. But this is not what I had said so. I was saying that, please Mr. Compiler or please Mr. JVM, I am passing you 11 as an integer, so invoke a method which is taking an integer. But there was no method defined and it invoked long. This is the case with overloading. What happens is, whenever you are compiling the program and running the program, as I have told you, whenever you run the program, the type of the parameter is checked, and depending on the type of the parameter, I go and see in my class where is that particular method. If that particular method is there, I am going to invoke the method. So as a JVM or as the Java virtual machine, when at the runtime when I was getting invoked, I would have gone and searched for a method called as draw which is taking an integer. I did not find one. So I looked for another method which is taking a similar kind of parameter. A similar kind of parameter means it can be an int, it can be a long, it can be a float, it can be anything nearest to that type. Okay, so here there is something called as numeric promotion happens. Okay, now whenever you are passing this 11 is nothing but an integer. If I do not find any method which is taking an integer, I would promote the integer to long. Okay, and I would search that whether there is any method which is taking a long. If there is a method which is taking long, I am going to call or invoke that method. So whenever you are talking about overloading, I told you that whenever an overloaded method is invoked, I would search for the similar type of arguments. I am saying similar type. I am not saying exact match, because if I don't find the exact match, I would go for the arguments which are nearer to the exact match. Okay, so when I pass this 11, if I do not find int, I am going to call for long. Okay, so there is an exception or there is a twist with this overloading mechanism. It says that, don't worry boss, even if you don't find the exact match, I am going to call a method which is nearer to the exact match. Okay, so now can you please uncomment this? Now we will see that if we uncomment this method, compile this method again and run this application again, which method would it call? would it go for an exact match or would it go for nearer to the exact match? Which one do you guys say? Of course, it would go for an exact match. First, I will search for an exact match. Not there, a type nearer to that. Ye nahi to wo sahi. Okay, compile. Now run the application. Now when you run the application, it is going to call your int. Okay, so now, so whenever you are talking about overloading, the first thing which happens in overloading is I do my numeric promotion. Okay. Now the second thing over here is, can you add one more method over here? Int draw. Okay, copy that, paste that. Now say integer, integer. Now in this class we have got four overloaded methods. Draw which is not taking any parameter, draw which is taking int as a parameter, primitive int type, draw which is taking a parameter integer, but this is of class wrapper. Okay, this is a wrapper class int I, and this is again a primitive type long. Okay, now in this particular case, just go down. If I say p.draw 11, which method you think it's going to invoke? Would it invoke the primitive one? Would it invoke the wrapper class one? Or would it invoke the long one? We will just see, and then we'll explain you, or I'll explain you how did we come here. Just a second. You'll have to change something in your main, which is draw big integer called. Yeah. Okay, now just compile. Again, which integer got to call? Primitive type integer got called. Okay, because go to the main. Here 11, we are just passing it as a number. We did not create an object of 11 and we passed it over here. Now here on line number 31, we would say integer I equal new integer. I should be capital case. Integer I small I. Integer I equal new integer, and in the parenthesis pass 11. Okay. Now instead of passing the number as 11, I am going to pass this object I. Okay. Now compile this. So I have specifically passed a object over here, and at the time of invoking, I am going to invoke a method which is taking my integer as an object and not as the primitive type. Okay. Now over here, one very interesting thing. I am going to comment out from line number 15. Sorry, comment out from line number 15 to 19. हाँ यहाँ पर 19 तक से. Okay. Now here in this example, I have commented out this integer part. Okay, the one which is taking object integer, I have commented it out. Now I won't change this code. I will say integer I equal new integer. I am passing the same object. Okay, but here will I find the method which is taking an object? No. So which one would get called? Integer would get called, or long is going to get called? We'll just see. Combine. Int is getting called. Okay. Why? Because now when I am passing integer object, even though I did not get a method which is taking an integer object, I got a method which is taking an integer primitive type. So my object integer will get automatically converted into a primitive integer. Now, how does this happen? This is thanks to Java 1.5, who has introduced the concept of auto boxing and boxing. Okay, concept of auto boxing. That auto boxing means a primitive gets converted into a wrapper class automatically. A wrapper class gets converted into primitive automatically based on the need. Now here in this case, I am passing a wrapper class object, but I have a method which is taking a primitive type. So in this case, boxing happened. What happened? The wrapper class object is getting converted into a primitive type. The vice versa is also true. Now what I would do is go up and comment this out. From line number 10. Okay, that's it. It's fine. Now come down. Compile this program again. Okay, here two things happened. Now long is getting called. I'll tell you the sequence of the Java compiler, how it must have acted. Okay, go back. Now here I am invoking the draw with my wrapper class object as I. What firstly I will do? I will first find to search for an exact match. Did I find any? No. Then I'm going to convert it into a primitive type. Okay. After converting it into a primitive type, I'm going to search for the exact match. Did I find any? No, I did not find any. Then the third thing is I'm going to search whether I have or whether there is any method which is close to this particular data type. Do I have any method over here? Yes, I have, and the method is draw, which is taking this long type. Okay. So here what happens is, actually this is the wrong thing. First of all, auto boxing takes place. If the auto boxing is not there, then I would go for my numeric promotion. So this is the sequence, or this is the sequence in which your JVM goes in order to invoke your overloaded method. It would search whether auto boxing is possible. If it is possible, it will call that particular method. Then it will search if auto boxing is not possible, then it would go for your numeric promotion and it would call the particular method which is very close to that data type. Now here again, I am going to change this thing and make it as capital L. Okay. Now I would compile again. Now would this work? It says, no, I cannot work at all. Why is that so? Go behind. Now here I am passing an integer. At the time of compilation, I am going to check that whether there is any method which is taking integer as an object or which is taking any numeric type. Will I get anything? No, because I have a method which is taking long over here, and long is a different class of, long is a different class altogether. It is a special wrapper class for long primitive. So whenever you are talking about wrapper classes, numeric promotion in wrapper classes is not possible. Numeric promotion can only take place between the primitive data types. Okay, so whenever there is a case of overloading, how a particular method is going to get invoked is to be decided by the JVM, and the JVM looks at these two mechanisms, or it looks at these two rules as to which particular method I am to invoke first. Okay, now this was all about overloading. What is overloading? How overloading is done? What are the different types of overloading? And what are the mechanisms the JVM looks in case to call which overloaded method? But the fundamental question remains, when should we use overloading? or why should we use overloading? We come back to this particular same question of drawing the triangle and drawing the rectangle. Okay? When to use this important tool which we have of overloading? Now here, in the very beginning of my session, I told you this was a person, there was a method called as draw, he was drawing triangles or he was drawing rectangles and all that stuff, okay? Now, I cannot define 100 to 200 methods over here on the capability of a person what object he can draw. I cannot do that, okay? Because it would be unnecessary wastage of memory, the code is going to be bulky and your software is not going to work as intended, okay? Whenever you are writing code, you should always keep in mind how small can your code be? How can I minimize the size of my code? How can I reuse my things, okay? Now, one and the only agenda of all this draw triangle, draw rectangle, draw blah 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 things was to draw something, okay? Now here, what am I going to do is, instead of having different names, I am going to have only one method over here called as draw. The name of the method would be only draw. Okay, so the user does not get confused. If I want to draw a triangle, which method should I call? If I want to draw a rectangle, which method should I call? In order to reduce that confusion, I am going to have one method called as draw, which is taking the coordinates. Suppose if I want to draw a triangle, I would have a method called as draw, which is taking int length, int breadth, and int height. Okay? Now if I want to draw a square, I would have another method which is going to take 4 coordinates. Okay? Now if I want to draw any shape, I am going to have another method which is taking a string and the type of the block which I want to draw. So now, whenever the user has got to draw anything, he will only invoke one method called as draw. Based on what shape he has to draw, he is going to pass those coordinates or he is going to pass those arguments at the runtime, and based on those arguments, that particular overloaded method is going to get called. Okay? Now, you would tell me, how is it different from draw triangle, draw rectangle? These methods are also taking the same amount of memory, and these methods are also taking the same amount of space in the code. But now my code looks much more cleaner. It is very easy to understand that I have one method called as draw. Depending on what shape you want to draw, you only pass the arguments and you will get the shape. So when are we supposed to overload a method? When we have number of methods doing the same thing, okay, but with a different flavor. In those conditions, we should always go for overloading of a method. Now, here, this particular draw method, what the whole and soul principle of this method is, I want to draw something on the console. It can be a triangle, it can be a rectangle, it can be a square. So, the action which I want to do is one. How I do it, it varies. It varies depending on the implementation of one method to the implementation of second method. Okay? So, just note down, whenever you have multiple methods which is performing the same action, in those cases, you should go for overloading of methods. Okay? So, this is all about overloading.